Okay, next is age in company. So age in company should be in numeric value, right? Age in company is here. Okay, here it should be a floating point value, but it's coming in as a string object. So what is the problem? And again, first thing we can do is age in company. So do a unique, and then see what we have. Okay. Now that's way too many unique values, kind of hard to look through them and find what the problem is. So well, one thing we can do is, if the value inside is a floating point value or not, we can check that. So like for example, if you did like 13.68, right? 13.68, if you say is numeric, okay, so it says false, you would expect that to be true, right? But the problem is numeric looks for integer values, so it's going to say false. But what can we do? Well, there is another one called float. Okay. Now when we do this, then if it successfully converts the value to 13.68, then we know that that's a good value. Okay. On the other hand, if it has some kind of problem, like 13.6 instead of 8 we have a G or something, then that's going to throw an error. So that's the key. That's how we can check. We can go in and check each and every value and see whether it's good or bad. Okay. So what we're going to do is, we have to go in and check one value at a time. So we have to define a function and then apply that function to this column. Okay. And we will call this so let's define a function is float, and okay, so it's going to come in with a number, and we're going to check whether that's a good number or not. Okay. So what we're going to do is, we're going to convert it into x. Convert it into float. We take that x, say, okay, we're going to convert it into a floating point. Okay. And if there is no error, then it's good. But if there is error, then you have to say false. So how are we going to do that? In Python, we have what is called try. Okay. What this does is, it will execute the code, and if everything is good, then happy, keep going. Okay. But if it throws an error, then it'll you have an option to do an alternative. Okay. So if it is good, okay, we're going to return true. Okay. Now except value error is a key word. Okay. If there is an error thrown here, it's not going to end the execution. It's not going to just throw an error and say, okay, I'm done. Okay. It's going to now do what you say here in except. Okay, I have a. Okay. Now return false. Now let's get this set up. Now if you apply this function to df1 age in company, right? We apply this is float, okay? Now it comes back with a list of true, false, okay? But of course it only prints the first 5 and the last 5. Now how do we know whether there are any false here? Because if it is a false, that's where the problem is, which needs to be fixed. Okay, so how do we figure out whether there are any false? Okay, remember true comes back as 1 and false comes back, the numerical value for true is 1, numerical value for false is 0. So if you do sum, that's going to tell us how many true values are there. This data set has 100 observations. If this comes back as 100, then we know that everything is true. Anything less than that, we know there are some false. Okay. So there is 96 which are good, 4 are false. So there are some problems here. There are 4 of them that have problematic values. Now how do we zero in on those 4? So what we can do is, now that part comes back with true or false, right? So let's put that into a mask. Okay, so this is going to be our mask. It will be a bunch of true or false, right? So this gives us a series with true or false. So floating is true or not. Now if we can use this mask and see only those which are false, right? So we can go to df1, okay, dot log, okay. Now we want only false, so you have to say not yes, this squiggly thing is not. Okay, so the opposite of what we have there. So we want all the rows that are false, right? And then we want this column, age in company. Okay, so there it's printing out the 4 numbers that gave us a problem. Okay, so what is the problem now? Looks good to me, right? Well, actually here, this is a strange thing between 1 and L. It looks like what appears to be 1s are actually L's, little lowercase l. So let's try that. If that is true, then we're good. So we now need to say, okay, df1, okay, age in company years, right? Replace L with 1. Again, remember we have to first replace as a string, and then we try to convert it to a floating point and see whether it's worked. Regex is true. Comma in place is true. Okay. And then we'll run this to see whether everything is floating point or not. Okay, so now we have all 100 are true. Okay, so they're all floating point numbers. So now we can then do df1 age in company years is equal to, you can change the type, okay, as type, okay, float. Okay. So now age is floating point.